This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglan.
I look at a lake and I see water. My guest, on the other hand, sees what's underneath, fish. And it's his job to help keep fish populations in balance. We go inside outdoors this week with fisheries expert Gerry Buynak. And we'll talk about new fishing regulations in effect for the year 2013. Big lakes, small lakes, maybe even your favorite fishing hole. Details splash your way next on Kentucky Afield Radio.
Kentucky's Nature and Wildlife Fund. You see it as a contribution option when you prepare your state tax return. But you also see it as songbirds and wildflowers. You can see it in clear, flowing streams. Sometimes it's so secluded you may never see it at all. But if you only see it on your PC as you prepare your taxes, that's good too. Google it and see the difference this fund makes. Kentucky's Nature and Wildlife Fund, the natural tax shelter.
A friend of mine is a liar, so I'm going to do what the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife says. Take a phony fishing. What he'll say is a 10-pound bass is really a little closer to 1. Oh, and that fancy rod he'll buy, he'll say he found at a yard sale. All lies. Maybe you should try fishing too. Don't think you'll like it? Don't kid yourself. Kentucky fishing. It'll make a liar out of you. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglan. We are talking fish today. It's that new fishing year, and there are some new rules and regs out there that fishermen, fisherwomen, need to know about. And in the studio with me, Gerry Buynak, Assistant Director of the Kentucky Division of Fisheries. Gerry, welcome.
Glad to be here.
There was a press release that talked about some new regs that were coming into play on March 1st. That March 1st has already passed. But for this new year, and let me just go down the laundry list of what they are. New regs include changes to smallmouth bass regulations in Otter Creek outdoor recreation area, a reduction of the striped bass minimum size limit at Lake Cumberland, and some new catfish regulations at 3 state-owned lakes, plus some statewide things. So we'll just go down that laundry list. We've got an hour to talk about this, and let's find out what's going on in the world of fishing regulations. So I assume you're looking forward to spring fishing, sir.
You betcha. It's right around the corner, too.
What prompts the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife and your division, the Division of Fisheries, to make changes in regulations?
A couple main things, I think. One is angler interest, angler desire to have something changed. And probably the main thing is, in our research and our sampling, if we see populations that are declining, populations that are slow growing, we manipulate and manage by changing a length limit or a creel limit, stock, and that sort of thing. So there's a balance that you're looking for. Correct.
For example, is the balance in a pond the same as it would be in Lake Maze versus Lake Barkley? Is that mix of fish, it's all different?
Well, on the surface, they're kind of the same, but you can't manage a pond the same way you manage a large lake like Lake Cumberland.
How do management strategies change? How do management strategies change from body of water to body of water?
Well, you got to look at a number of things. You have to look at the forage base. You have to look at the trophic state, amount of nutrients that is in a water body. You have to look at the predator base, too. Ponds generally are very simple. You have bass, bluegill, catfish. But when you get into a larger lake, you may be talking 15, 16, 17 different species of fish and multiple predators.
Multiple predators, and fishermen among them.
Correct.
And so that has to be taken into account when the pressure that this lake is going to get.
Right. I mean, it's biological, you're talking the fish, and then it's social, you're talking the anglers. And you have to balance both of those, too, besides balancing the fish populations in the lake.
These regulations went into effect on March 1st, the beginning of the license year.
Correct.
Is it routine that regs would change or go into effect on that same day, on March 1st, versus do you ever make reg changes any other time of the year, mid-year?
Normally, we submit our reg changes to our commission in this time of the year, February, and up until June. And actually, the reg goes through the legislative process, and some of them may be on the book, not really on the books, may be passed, ready to go in June. But the reason we wait to do it till March is that's when our new boating and fishing guide comes out, and that way we can notify all the anglers that things have actually changed. And that's usually when our law enforcement people start enforcing the regs, once it's out there, once the people know about it.
Uniformity to regulations, I've noticed that it will change from lake to lake. It can change river to river. Is there uniformity in regulations out there that...
Well, we try to keep them as uniform as possible. For example, largemouth bass, the statewide size limit is 12 inches. The vast majority of our lakes have 12-inch size limits, smaller lakes, streams. But there are certain situations, particularly with largemouth in our larger reservoirs, where that 12-inch size limit is not a real good thing because of, particularly in the past, because of overfishing, harvest, and the quality of fisheries under a 12-inch size limit in most cases could decline and not be quite as good as it could be. So we have gone in most of our reservoirs now to like a 15-inch size limit, which would increase the numbers of quality fish in that body of water. One interesting thing that's kind of showing up in our creel survey data, though, is anglers anymore aren't harvest-oriented in terms, for largemouth bass. 60, 70, 80% of our keeper-sized bass that are caught are actually released. And so bass has gone from maybe a consumptive-type species to a catch-and-release species.
I had an individual, Lee McClellan, on our show a few weeks ago, and I asked him, how many fish do you keep of what you catch? And, his answer was 1 to 2%,
yeah.
1 to 2 out of 100.
A lot of it depends on the species, too. Crappie, I don't think there are too many people that catch and release keeper-sized crappie, just because of how good they are.
I got to wonder if anybody would catch and release a muskie.
A lot of people do.
Do they?
Yes, a lot of people.
And why is that? If it's so hard to catch, why would you just immediately turn it back? Would it be undersized?
Well, there are two groups. There's the consumptive and there's the catch and release type people. And I think the catch and release type people see, even if it's a keeper fish, say it's a 40-inch fish, they'll put it back, and hopefully the next time they'll come back out there, it'll be a 42-inch fish.
Well, that's true.
So, but then I know a number of other people that love to eat muskie. So it depends on where you are and what you want to do.
We're talking to Gerry Buynak, who is the Assistant Director of the Kentucky Division of Fisheries, and we've got Gerry for the next half hour or so, and we're going to talk about new changes for the year 2013. If you're an angler, some things you may want to know. First of which on this list is in Meade County. That's along the Ohio River, a little bit southwest of Louisville, Kentucky. If you're listening to state, not sure exactly where Meade County is, at Otter Creek, outdoor recreation area. And the fishing there is in Otter Creek. It's actually named for the stream that flows through it. If you have not been there, have you fished Otter Creek?
I have not, no.
But there are some new laws that go in effect for Otter Creek. And there has to be a ton of fishermen from Louisville that go there, at Fort Knox area, that go there.
Right. Even out of state that are coming there right now.
What do they need to know? The
one big thing that's changed there is that beginning March 1st, we have implemented a 12 to 16-inch protected slot limit. That means if you catch on smallmouth and largemouth bass, if you catch a bass between 12 and 16 inches, you have to immediately release it in the best possible condition. The creel there is 6-fish creel, of which only one can be over 16 inches. That mirrors the size limit that we have on Elkhorn Creek, and we have had on Elkhorn Creek for a number of years, and it really shows that it can keep the quality of the stream fishery in good shape. The reason we put that size limit on was Otter Creek was closed to all angling and so forth for, I think it was about 2 years, and suddenly it opened up. During the time it was closed, harvest pressure wasn't there. Nobody was really fishing it. And when it opened up, we had this influx of a tremendous amount of fishing pressure and reports of large numbers of quality size, over 12-inch fish, smallmouth coming out of the stream. So we wanted to kind of nip that in the bud in order to maintain and hopefully improve the quality of the smallmouth and largemouth fisheries in Otter Creek.
So a smallmouth bass slot limit is now in place on Otter Creek at Otter Creek Outdoor Recreational Area. And when we come back from the break, a new day is dawning at Lake Cumberland, Gerry. Water level is on the rise, so are the numbers of fish and those in pursuit. Details just ahead. I'm Charlie Baglan. The guest is Gerry Buynak. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. We're back on Kentucky Afield Radio. I'm Charlie Baglan. Gerry Buynak in the studio with me, and we're talking about 2013 and the new fishing regulations that are coming down the pike. And right now we're on the subject of Otter Creek Outdoor Recreation Area. Yep. That's a little southwest of Louisville. A great place if you've ever been to hike or just to take in the scenery, fishing. Otter Creek runs through there, and you say you've just implemented, as of March 1st, a slot limit. What do you hope, let's say a year from now, 5 years from now, that's going to do for the fishermen?
What we should see is, well, first of all, smallmouth bass in streams are really slow growing. So what we'll see is to get to 12 inches, for example, it probably takes about 5 years for them to get to 12 inches. To get to 16 inches, you're probably talking 7 or 8 years. So what we hope to see is, as multiple year classes come into that slot limit, there's going to be more and more quality size fish in Otter Creek. If you can protect those 12, 13, 14, 15-inch fish, that means there's going to be more fish that go over the slot limit, and potentially you could see 18 to 20-inch smallmouth in Otter Creek.
There you go. And how many years down the pike for that?
That would probably be 3 to 5 years till you see the maximum benefits of that slot limit.
Is a slot limit something you will keep in place even after that time?
Not necessarily. If, for example, most people in terms of smallmouth harvest don't really harvest smallmouth. I did a survey years ago on Elkhorn Creek where I asked the anglers that were fishing for smallmouth, do you keep any smallmouth bass that you catch? And it was something like 90-some% of them said, no, I never keep a smallmouth. I then asked them if the department thought that if you would keep some small fish, that the overall quality in the stream would improve. Would you then keep some small fish, like under the slot limit? And it was like 70 or 80% still said no, even though we wanted them to keep some of the small fish. Most people don't really harvest smallmouth. Let's
turn now to Lake Cumberland. That is a body of water that is extremely popular, not just with the folks in Kentucky, but for states around. It has quite a story to tell in the last few years with the drawdown and the potential breach of that dam at Wolf Creek. Things are looking better now, and the water is on the rise. Can you take me back to 2007, Gerry, and tell me a little bit about the history?
Yeah, back in 2007, because of safety issues with the dam, Corps lowered the lake. Normal lake level is 728. They lowered it to 680. If you look at water volume in the lake, they essentially cut the volume of the water in the lake by half.
By half.
And that had a tremendous impact on the amount of winter stored or cold water in the lake. That also negatively impacted fisheries in the tailwater. And I'm talking really three main species, two species in the lake, that'd be the striped bass and the walleye, and of course the trout fisheries, rainbow, brown trout, and brook trout that we just started in the Cumberland tailwater. And it all depended on the type of year that we had. If we had a relatively dry spring and summer, we didn't see very many impacts to the lake or the tailwater because there was enough cold water storage in there. But if you have a really wet spring, if you have a really wet summer, the Corps has to get that water out of the lake, keep it at 680. And the lake itself, they discharge either through the turbines, which are, 622 feet, 58 feet below the current water level at 680.
Is the water that's coming out of the lake, is it coming off the top, somewhere in the middle? Is it coming off the bottom?
It's coming out of that 622-foot layer. That's the center of the turbines. That's where most of the water is discharged from at Lake Cumberland right now. The good cold water is at that turbine level. That's where the stripers, walleye like to be at in those temperatures during the summertime.
So that makes sense what you're saying. When you got a lot of water coming through the lake, that cool oxygenated water layer is gone.
2 years ago, I believe it was, we had a major rain event through the summer, and I think it was in September. We had reports of large numbers of striped bass and walleye dying in the lake. And actually, we even let people, we did an emergency rig, and we let people actually hand grab basically the stripers and walleye that were dying so they weren't wasted. So we saw growth rates declining, saw the conditions of striped bass declining. We saw the fish kill that occurred, and we decided that this year what we wanted to do was reduce the length limit from 24 inches to 22 inches. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is, like I said, the growth and condition of the fish, and another one was that fish kill virtually eliminated. I don't think John Williams, who's our district biologist in that area, when he gill netted for stripers recently, that I don't think he saw anything over 30 inches. Very few fish over 24 inches. And so anglers fishing the lake this year virtually wouldn't be able to take a striped bass home, very few of them. And so what we wanted to do was to lower the length limit, give them a few fish to be able to catch and take home, and we wanted to let the anglers reduce the numbers of 20, 22, 23, 24-inch fish, because that year class that is coming in at that size, 20 to 24 inches, is extremely abundant. And so if the anglers will reduce some of those, hopefully we will see an improvement in growth, an improvement in condition of the stripers that are still there, coupled with what we've learned this year, that if everything goes right, the Corps will be raising water levels from 680 to 700 or 705. That'll give us 20 foot of more cold water in the lake, which should, barring any hurricane that comes in and dumps 12 inches of rain on top of us, should give us really good conditions in the lake this year. And if everything goes well, the dam tests okay, they plan on bringing the lake back up to normal level 7/28 next year.
So that's good news. All the repairs to Wolf Creek Dam are done, and done successfully, and hats off to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for getting that done. And the lake is coming back. Come back to Cumberland, I heard someone say once.
Yeah.
Now, when the lake level rises, that is going to be in effect for that top 20 feet a new lake because of all the vegetation around the bank. Are we going to see a spurt of growth?
Everybody that I know tremendously excited about this that's going to occur, and we can't wait to see what's going to happen. What everybody and what I think is going to happen is, I call it a new lake boom, new lake syndrome. Once that water comes up 20 feet this year, hopefully, all that vegetation that has been grown there over the last 5 years will be flooded. That flooded vegetation will, in my mind, create a new lake boom. We're going to see explosions in largemouth bass spawns, crappie spawns. And some of the reason for that is that flooded habitat will provide structure for the baby fish, which will increase the survival of the spawn. It'll also provide habitat and a surface area for algae to grow. And what else will come in are bugs, benthos, insects, and that will result in improved and increased food supply for our baby fish, so they should grow like crazy.
Is that vegetation that grows up around the banks, is that food for fish, or is that just a place to hide?
That it's a place to hide, and it produces food for fish because of the insects that will come and colonate that habitat, those trees and that kind of stuff. The other thing is that vegetation over time will rot. There's grass and that kind of stuff. Once that vegetation rots, it'll put nutrients into the water, so the food chain of the lake will increase and all species will benefit. The other thing that I like about it is it'll help me as an angler, because the big fish will use that as structure too, so I'll know where to go fish. So if people know where all these trees and areas are, I'd hit them, bass, crappie. It's just going to be phenomenal.
We've been bragging on Lake Cumberland. What is the new regulations that go into effect as of March 1st of this year?
The new reg is just on striped bass. We had a 2-fish creel, 24-inch minimum length limit. It'll stay 2-fish creel, but it's reduced to 22 inches.
22 inches.
22
was
inches.
24.
Correct. Now, the other thing that we were talking about, the new lake boom, what I'm really excited about is that new lake boom usually lasts for 3 to 5 years. Well, 2013, they're going to bring it up 20 foot. There's still 25 foot of vegetation that grew over the last 5 or 6 years. So in 14, when they bring it back up again, that additional 20 to 25 foot, we'll get another influx and another boom. So this is kind of a double boom. It's a shotgun, 2 barrels. So it should extend that new lake boom, which normally is 3 to 5 years, probably a lot longer than that. So Cumberland for the next 5-6 years, it's going to be phenomenal.
It's going to be a great place.
Exactly.
It's going to be an angling heaven.
Yep.
Jerry, on our next segment, I want to talk about new regs coming down for some of the state's smaller lakes. And later next half hour, we'll be talking about the very first of its kind in Kentucky Asian carp fishing tournament. Carp Madness, if you will. Ron Brooks will be along to talk about that. Stay with us. This is Charlie Baglan on Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglan. It's no secret, I like blueberries. A blueberry muffin with butter, it's the food of kings. The workforce that goes into the production of blueberries really isn't people at all. It's bees. I read 50,000 hives of Maine blueberry bees fly around gathering pollen from a variety of plants and ultimately fertilizing what we know as blueberries. Seeing a bee on a flower is a common sight, but what you don't see is our topic next week. We talk about this dusty, sneezy side of nature as we go inside outdoors with a biologist from the USDA. Right now, however, we'll take a look at what's biting where on this week's Fishing Report.
This is Rob Rold in the Northwestern Fishery District, and fishing's definitely picking up in our area. Hot spot right now seems to be Rochester Dam on the Green River. Anglers have been catching several nice limits of sauger and the occasional walleye below Rochester Dam. Rough River Lake, Nolin River Lake reservoirs are both at winter pool and holding stable. Anglers are starting to pick up more crappie at both lakes, primarily concentrate on the upper ends of the lake. Anglers we've been talking to seem to be doing better on jigs than with minnows, although they are catching them on boats. At Lake Malone, anglers are starting to pick up a few bass. The key seems to be fishing your bait slowly. They're catching them on jig and pigs, spinner bait, and some of the softer plastics. So go out and have a nice day fishing.
Down in western Kentucky at Kentucky and Barkley Lakes, fishing is starting to pick up. The lake levels are running about a foot above summer pool. Water temperature is about 45 degrees, so still a little cooler, but if you can find some of those sunshiny days where the wind's not blowing you around, they're starting to catch some black crappie up along the shoreline, casting the bank with tube jigs and little inline spinners. Had some good bass reports on some sunshiny days of bass moving up on shallow gravelly bars. The anglers were using baits like a jerk bait to catch those bass. And of course, you still got bass out on your deeper ledges too. And the crappie are still out there on the deeper ledges, mostly the white crappie. And if you enjoy spider rigging or trolling for crappie, it's a good time to be doing it during February and March, using drift stocks on those little bit windy days. And then white bass are also starting to run up into the creeks, and I'm hearing some good reports from Little River and Eddy Creek. Well, this is Paul Reister, and I hope you find a good day to go fishing.
This is Jeff Crosby with the Central District Fishing Report. With warming temperatures over the next several weeks, we should expect to see an excellent time to catch pre-spawn largemouth bass. Fish of the season or even a fish of a lifetime can be taken during this time of year. Free-spawn largemouth bass can be caught on pig and jig combinations, fished along shoreline cover. Additionally, jerkbaits and crankbaits fished on primary and secondary points can pay off this time of year also. And finally, don't forget about your local Fins Lake, your Fishing in Neighborhoods lake. Many of these lakes have been stocked with trout over the past couple months and are being stocked with channel catfish during the month of March. Please check out our website at fw.ky.gov for Fins Lakes in your area. Good luck, good fishing, and hope to see you on the water.
We are talking about the new fishing regulations that are in place for the year 2013. Gerry Buynak with the Kentucky Division of Fisheries is my guest. We'll get into the subject of catfish after the break.
Kentucky's Nature and Wildlife Fund. You see it as a contribution option when you prepare your state tax return. But you also see it as songbirds and wildflowers. You can see it in clear flowing streams. Sometimes it's so secluded you may never see it at all. But if you only see it on your PC as you prepare your taxes, that's good too. Google it and see the difference this fund makes. Kentucky's Nature and Wildlife Fund, the natural tax shelter.
It's time to register for Kentucky's elk hunts. This is Tim Farmer. The Kentucky Fish and Wildlife website is Elk Central and the only place to enter this year's draw. Elk hunting in Old Kentucky. Take it from me, there's nothing like it. 1,000 names will be drawn, and with the Pick 2 option, you gotta like your odds. The deadline is midnight, April 30th. The Kentucky Elk Draw. Enter at fw.ky.gov. Again, fw.ky.gov.
You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. It's a new fishing year. My name's Charlie Baglan, Gerry Buynak, fisheries biologist extraordinaire with the Kentucky Division of Fisheries in the studio, and we're talking about new regulations for the year 2013 that have just gone into effect on March 1st. We were on the subject of Lake Cumberland, Gerry, when we went to break. Let's wrap that up. You're going to do some supplemental stockings down there to try to jumpstart fishing for the area.
Right. Since the water's going to come back up, we're going to what we call pulse or increase striped bass stocking and walleye stocking. Normally, we put in 350,000 of each year. Because the lake is coming back, we're going to go up to 500,000 of each species this year and possibly next year. Since the tailwater is coming back and the conditions are really improved, we're going to, later this fall, stock 10,000, probably 15 to 18 plus inch rainbow trout. They'll be in the protected slot. They'll immediately improve the quality of the fishery because the numbers of fish, rainbows, in the slot and above the slot are virtually gone.
Why would you go anywhere else to fish?
Exactly.
It would have to be great.
Yep.
Sounds like good things coming this year for Lake Cumberland. Around the state, we have some smaller lakes. I don't know if that makes them any easier to manage, but it might. As of March 1st this year, there's a 12-inch minimum size limit for channel and blue cats, and they are McNeely Lake in Jefferson County, Lake Reba in Madison County, and Reformatory Lake in Oldham County. What are your comments there?
Well, what we have done, it's been a while, I don't know how many years ago, but we implemented a 12-inch size limit on catfish in like 9 of our small lakes. We've been following those, and we've been seeing some effects of this 12-inch size limit that are looking like it's really doing some good. The issue that we had was when we did this research, we weren't really into sampling catfish, so we didn't know what these populations look like in these lakes before we put the length limit on. So what we're trying to do is kind of the last bit of the puzzle here is to look at, and we do have multiple years of data when these lakes were under a no length limit, and we're going to see what happens to the populations after we put on a 12-inch limit. Most of these lakes have no reproduction for channel catfish. They're all stocked. And what we're trying to do is better use our hatchery resources. And if we can put a 12-inch size limit on the catfish and stock fewer numbers, for example, because we'll be protecting them, we'll be able to either cut back our hatchery production of catfish take that area into some other kind of production, or we can stock more lakes with catfish. So it's basically the last piece of the research project that we need to look at to see what the 12-inch size limit actually did.
What is it that's missing that catfish can't reproduce in smaller lakes?
There's only one lake that I've ever seen, that I've ever worked on, where we saw some natural reproduction. That was A.J. Jolly. And typically, for some reason, if you have a really good largemouth bass population in a small lake, you never, ever see reproduction. They just get chowed down, basically.
So the bass eat the catfish.
Exactly. They like little baby catfish for some reason.
If I were a fisheries manager, I would say, can we do something to increase the catch for bass? Does that type of thinking enter into what you do when you manage a body of water?
The catch for a bass?
To increase the bass catch.
And I think that's why A.J. Jolly has natural reproduction. We see the bass population there is relatively low level compared to a lot of other lakes. The other thing, though, you need, too, for catfish and spawning is crevices, holes, and, log jams, root wads, because they like those crevices. That's where they spawn. That's where they protect their young, and they stay with their young while they're hatching. And then the young will disperse. And I think once they disperse, that's when the bass and bluegill start chowing down on them.
It can't be easy, the job you have, because the one statistic that I know is 8,000 miles of fishable streams. How many lakes are there? How many smaller lakes?
See, there's something like 200 and some thousand acres of water, 17, 18, 19 major reservoirs, hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of smaller lakes. So surprising, I guess, is our agency, Fisheries Division, we only have less than 70 people in the whole division, and we have probably 25 biologists. We cover the whole state, streams, rivers, small lakes, ponds, farm ponds, and large reservoirs. So it's...
and every one is unique.
Exactly. And you have to know what's going on in every one of them. You have to know how each species relates to each other. And, I've always said that people see water and they think fish, and that water should have the same amount of fish in. People in eastern Kentucky, for example, have some really good opportunities, but their bass populations, for example, aren't the same as Kentucky and Barkley Lake. And they always say, well, it's Kentucky and Barkley Lake is really good fishing. Why can't Carp Creek Lake, why can't Paintsville Lake, Cave Run Lake have the same bass populations? Water's water, right? No. It's not. The land area, the activities of man going in the drainage, farming, fertilizer, adds nutrients to those lakes. Food chain is better, and up the line to the bass population, top of the food chain, there are more, just because of the land type and activities.
There's one more regulation we ought to hit on. There's statewide regulations to snagging that have changed as of March 1st. What is that reg?
It has a 7.5-foot rod length reg, and no longer than 7.5 feet. We've dropped that restriction. You can use any size rod you want now. The only thing that I know that why it was that length was possibly because of safety issues. You had 3 or 4 people on the bank snagging, and when they snag, they're throwing a very heavy weight with large hooks. And so I can see somebody with a 20-foot rod, I'm exaggerating a little bit, whipping this big weight and hooks around while people are on the bank standing there with them. And so
it's a safety concern.
I think it was, but we haven't had any problems. And as a matter of fact, most people use rods that are larger than 7.5 feet right now, so we got rid of that restriction. And if we see problems, we hear about problems, we can always come back and re-implement it.
There are a variety of ways to fish. If you went out with a cane pole with a bobber and a hook and a sinker, put a worm on the hook, probably a bluegill is going to take a bite out of that. And that's pretty easy. Snagging, on the other hand, to me would seem, I've not done this, Gerry.
I haven't either.
Would have to be one of the more difficult fish.
I think it's a good workout, too. They might want to turn it into a workout because they're, like I said, throwing big, heavy weights, and they're really ripping that weight and hook through the water, jerking it really hard. and hopefully, snagging a fish. One of the big species that they're after are paddlefish. We implemented years ago 2-fish statewide limit on paddlefish, except below Kentucky and Barkley Lake where there's 8-fish limit. And if I remember correctly, our snagging season, it's a limited amount of time. It's from February, I think, till May 10th. Limited amount. They like to target paddlefish and some catfish in some cases.
We talked about this a little bit at the very opening of the show, how often the Department of Fish and Wildlife and your team, the Division of Fisheries, has to implement or ask the Fish and Wildlife Commission to consider changes. Have you ever had a year where everything's cool, we can leave it just where it is, or is there always a little tweak?
I don't remember very many years that we didn't change something. We're always tweaking things. I think the amount of changes have declined over time since I've been here, because when I first came, we had a 12-inch size limit on bass statewide. We went to a 12-inch in 1978. It had been 10 previously. So then we started going to 15-inch size limits everywhere, 1 a year, 2 a year, changes on, crappie size limits. When I first came, there were no size limits on crappie. We had a 60-fish creel. Now we have 9-inch, 10-inch size limits, 15-fish creel, 20-fish creel, depending on the situation. So a lot of that has seemed to gradually subside a little bit, but we're still tweaking. We're to the point of fine-tuning our fisheries to even try to get more out of them than we have.
Before we close the show, this segment at least, recap what these changes have been that we've been talking about the past 45 minutes.
What we're looking at changes this year is at Lake Cumberland, striped bass length limits have been reduced from 24 inches to 22. Otter Creek Park, we're looking at a change from a 12-inch minimum size limit on smallmouth and largemouth to a 12 to 16-inch protected slot with a 6-fish creel, of which only one can be over 16 inches. The rod length for snagging, which had been a maximum of 7.5 feet, now there are no restrictions. You can use any size rod that you want. And we've also implemented 12-inch size limit on catfish in McNeely Reformatory, Lake Reba.
I've heard it said, fishing, it makes Kentucky a keeper, and you're one of the guys that helps it happen. So
it's been a fun career.
It has. Gerry, thanks a million for being on with us here on Kentucky Afield.
Great to be here.
We've been talking to Gerry Buynak, Assistant Director with the Kentucky Division of Fisheries, about new regulations coming, here now, as of March 1st, for angling in Kentucky. We'll have more coming up. We'll talk about the inaugural, do you call it Carp Madness, Gerry?
Carp Madness.
Carp Madness. You'll want to hear more about this. Next on Kentucky Afield Radio. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglan. Ron Brooks is in the studio. And Ron, you're the director of the Kentucky Division of Fisheries, and you're also the promoter of the inaugural, what do you call this, Carp Madness?
It's a Carp Madness. It's a commercial fishing tournament in Kentucky and Barkley Lakes.
It's a fishing tournament for Asian carp. When's this coming up?
March 12th and 13th.
That's midweek. Right. Why did you choose to have a fishing tournament midweek? I know that for a lot of folks, a Saturday-Sunday affair.
Right. This is really not as much of a fanfare as it is let's get some Asian carp out of the lakes. And I chose midweek so it would be the least amount of interference with our anglers.
So you have an opportunity now to get regular Joe angler to work with commercial fishermen for some large-scale removal of these fish from our waters.
Right. This is actually a great opportunity for both of these fishing types to get together for a good cause, a common cause. And we're asking anglers, for instance, to volunteer with their boats to go out and be observers for us. We have a regulation in place for those two lakes where commercial fishing during the daytime is allowed as long as the fishermen stay with their nets and as long as those fishermen have department-approved observers. We use the observers to look for bycatch issues. They can count how many fish, for instance, that are not targeted by the commercial fishermen are caught and the disposition of those fish when they're released. In other words, are they going to live? How many they caught? That kind of thing.
If I'm on my boat, I'm not using a fishing pole. How are these caught?
They're using what's called gill nets and trammel nets. They're large nets with a very large mesh. These nets can go for 300 yards, a single net. And basically the fish will swim into them and get caught on their gills, and they're removed. And the ones they want to keep, they throw in the bottom of their boat, and the ones they want to discard and release, if they aren't in the nets too long, they'll usually survive.
So you say very large mesh. That's going to allow smaller fish to swim right through and capture the Asian carp, which are big fish.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because we're trying to reduce the amount of sport fish that would get caught in these nets. And the bigger the mesh, the less likely these things are to get caught. So
this is not your typical fishing tournament. This is the inaugural for Kentucky, and you were saying you could do these every day.
Right, and in those two lakes alone, we could have a tournament at least every month and before we have a measurable effect on the total population. However, even removal of a couple 100,000 pounds on a tournament will have some effect. So anytime we can move anything out of there, the better.
The Asian carp is an invasive fish that has come into our waters and waters up and down the Ohio and Mississippi valleys, taken over basically the habitat of the fun fish, the good guy fish.
Right. Well, that's the issue we have in Kentucky and Barclays. We're starting to get so many fish in there, and the size of these fish, they eat over 20% of their body weight a day. And so when you get fish in there that are competing with our sport fish, young of the year, for instance, for forage, then that's going to hurt our recruitment of our sport fish species. And that's what we're really concerned about. So as long as we can begin to have an effect on these populations, and if it takes a tournament, then great. It's a $20,000 purse for this tournament, $10,000 first prize, 5 total prizes. If we can get commercial fishermen interested in doing this and the anglers interested in helping them do this, it's a win-win for everybody.
One thing I have found, if you want to see something go to pieces, just leave it up to mankind.
Right.
We'll figure a way to jeopardize it.
Right.
Now, you take a look at passenger pigeons, buffalo in this country, they're used to roam by the millions, and deer in Kentucky, and we over-harvested them. There were unregulated harvests and pretty much hunted to oblivion.
Right.
Why could we not do that with Asian carp, or can we?
I think in certain circumstances we can do it. Within Kentucky alone, for instance, if we had the markets there that would pay fishermen 20 to 30 cents a pound, they would go after these things just because of the sheer numbers. And so definitely commercial industry can fish down anything still. Now the problem on the Big River itself, of course, is it's so large, and these fish move so far, it would take a multi-state effort, a concerted effort by commercial fishers from a lot of states to fish these things down. And it'll happen once the market gets going.
The tournament is going to take place this coming week, and these fish each can weigh how much?
Well, a big head can get over 100 pounds. Those aren't the ones that jump usually. The silver carp are the ones that jump. They can go over 70 pounds. So they get very big.
Could it easily weigh down a boat?
Oh, yeah. One of the issues that we're afraid of is that since they got to stay with their nets, the commercial fishermen by regulation have to stay with their nets, that they're going to have so many fish in their boat that they're going to have to quit fishing and pick up their nets and throw the fish back. So in order to alleviate that potential, we're going to have extra boats out there that we'll man ourselves, and all they got to do is call us and say, look, I'm full and I still got a net full of fish. Can you help me? And we'll get out there with extra boats so to make sure they don't have to throw any fish back.
Will they take their haul in? Will they go back out for more?
Definitely. They can fish take as many hauls as they need to within a period between 6 a.m., which is when they launch, and 5 p.m. was when they have to start their final haul. So that way they're not out there all night. Otherwise, they'd stay all night.
Carp Madness. I hope every fisherman out there gets 1 million of them.
Yeah, I agree.
I really do hope that. It's going to be something to see. If anybody wanted to go down and look, is there a tournament central?
Yes, Kentucky Dam Village, the boat ramp there. And we're going to have hopefully sponsor boards and some booths. And actually, I hope to have a grill there that we're actually fishing Asian carp so people can have a taste test.
There you go. There you go. What's the prize? Whoever wins the tournament, what do they win?
$10,000 first prize, $4,000 second, $3,000 third, $2,000 fourth, and $1,000 fifth.
That, even if you came in fifth, it ain't a bad day.
It's not a bad day.
Well, good luck to you. Is there a place we could go on the web to learn a little bit more about Carp Madness?
I do know if they get on our website, it'll be on that first page. It'll be very visible. There's a banner up that'll show Asian carp jumping, and if they just click on that banner, it'll take them to where they need to go.
Carp Madness, new fishing regulations. I tell you what, people who fish, I absolutely love you. You make the world go round. We have more information available on Carp Madness. We've got it up on our website and our marquee. You'll see it there, kyafield.com. Next Wednesday is more than just a hump day. It is also the first day of spring. Spring arrives Wednesday, March 20th, and not a moment too soon. An early taste is this weekend as we set our clocks forward by 1 hour. Don't forget, I'm dawdling so I can kill time to talk up to this post and sound like a real pro. That's all we have time for this week on the show. My name is Charlie Baglan. Join us again next week. We will go inside outdoors again, right here on Kentucky Afield Radio.